America, America, make God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and ever again divine.
How you doing today? So we have these series of chats to really talk about some issues that are happening in our community and in our state and how it's affecting a lot of people. I'm here with Mark Spooner, return guest, a fantastic guest, and we're kind of going to go over the Glenn Youngkin's policy that's been kind of an uproar with people from both sides. And it's really looking at what we're seeing as assault of parents' rights. We're kind of going to go through what the policy is and dissect it a little bit and kind of go through where are people possibly getting ideas that this is a bad thing, but then try to see it from their lens, but then see it from the other side of the lens and what's actually happening. Why are they assaulting this policy? So, Mark, I know you read through the policy. I mean, you're probably the smartest person in the room, and in my sphere of people that I know, I've not met a person that has have so much knowledge on what's been happening in Fairfax County. I know you educated me a lot on a lot of things that are happening. This policy just recently came out. I know it was on the brink, and it's Glenn Youngkin's policy, and it really ties into why he got elected. And there was a big uproar, obviously, in Loudoun County during COVID, where the parents felt that parental rights were on assault. And then you look in Maryland, when they took up the ability of opt-out, and going to two of those rallies, seeing what the simple thing that parents are asking for. They have their own issues where they did a poll, and some people don't think it's a poll, but it was a poll by Fairfax County Public Schools saying, do you want, gender studies combined between 4th and 8th grade, where 84% said no, and this current school board refused to look at that as accepting that this is not what the parent wants, and Ms. Reed saying the majority doesn't dictate what we do. Seeing all this and now look at the policy, what's your take on all this?
Well, the transgender policy that the Youngkin administration came out with, I think, is a very balanced and reasonable approach towards dealing with students who are undergoing gender dysphoria. It's something that when I was growing up, nobody ever even heard of, but it seems to become sort of the issue of the day, with activist groups supporting the idea that your gender that you are born with is just sort of a artificially assigned thing at birth, and you can't tell until they get older whether they're really a male or whether they're a female. And in 2021, the prior administration came out with a transgender policy, which itself was very controversial, because it said that if a student came in and told a teacher that he, if it was a biological boy, thought he might be a girl, the teachers would ask, well, do you want your parents to know about that? Well, typically a kid might say, well, I'm really a little worried about telling my parents. I don't know how they will react. And if they say that, under the policy, the prior policy, the school system would just accept that as a fact. They would convene a team of people to support the gender transition, and it would all be kept secret from the parents. The prior policy also provided that students could use whatever locker rooms they wanted, whatever bathrooms they wanted. And if they were traveling overnight for some activity that required overnight accommodations, that a transgender male could say, well, I consider myself a female, so I want a room with a girl. And all of that could be kept from the parents. Well, the Youngkin administration started a review of that when they came into office, and recently they came out with a new policy. And the key parts of it are that we're going to respect the rights of parents, that parents are really the key to raising their children. And if a student expresses some sort of doubt about their sexuality, you're not going to support gender transition without getting the parents involved. It also provides that if Susie says that he wants to be called Sam, that they're not going to be called Sam without getting the parents' permission. And that as far as locker rooms are concerned, that that students are to use the facilities that are consistent with their biological gender. At the same time, the policy says, we're going to make reasonable accommodations for students who question their gender. The prior policy basically said the transgender student comes first.
Yeah.
So that if you've got, let's say, a gym class that has, or some activity where you've got 20 girls and one biological male who says, I want to be a female, that transgender student would have an absolute right to use the girls' locker room. And the 20 girls would then have to say, well, find something alternative for me. So the rights of the one transgender trumped the rights of privacy and the interests of privacy of the 20. So it really all comes down to, are you going to respect the rights of parents, number one, and number two, are you going to disregard the rights of the majority in order to focus on the interests of the small minority?
You said a couple of good points right there. And, I do talk with a lot of people from the other side too, from the transgender side. I actually spoken to people from FCPS Pride on subjects like this. And the way I look at it is everyone has their heart, set to do honorable things, but they get so caught up in their aspect of it that they lose sight that it's going to be affecting another aspect. For example, you talked about female rights, not, the rights of females of privacy. I brought that up. Rights of female privacy. I felt that one right should not infringe upon another. Just not right. That's not the way our Constitution is made.
Absolutely.
There should be equal, and we look at equal throughout the board. You can't take one to give to the other. But because based on what they want, they're focused on, if there's one female in that mind, then that's a problem. But are we putting into our schools such a social pressure that if you do not accept it, or if you speak out upon this, that you're cast out and you're ridiculed? And I'm seeing that not just in our society here in our community. I've dealt with it being called transphobic and homophobic only because I have an opinion that it needs to be equal, and there's ways where we could bridge this gap and make it equal without infringing upon the other. But I'm also seeing in society through the news, we're seeing it day in and day out, that if you speak up and say, wait a minute, this isn't right, that you are automatically accused to be a homophobe, transphobe. Riley Gaines, for example, she spoke out and said it's not fair for me to swim against a male, biological male. There's a lot of people in the LGBT community that feel the same way. A lot of my friends in the LGBT community feel the same way. But it seems like the ones that are very passionate about the specifically trans movement gets to a point where if you do not agree with them, then you're against them, and then you're homophobic or transphobic. And they throw that in there. And I think it scares a lot of people. A lot of people tend to be scared away because right away they don't want to be felt that they hate people or they're transphobic, when in reality,
Right.
They just want equal.
Sort of tyranny by the minority and bullying people
Yes.
to agree with them.
Yes. And, when we start looking at the Youngkin policy, it's really dealing with bringing back parental rights, which what he ran on, bringing back parental rights. And when I look at that policy, a lot of people on the far left that I speak with tell me, well, that policy is going to kill trans kids. And the reason why they say kills trans kids because of suicide, depression, because they're not going to be able to come out. They're not going to be able to identify how they want to be identified because that's how they feel internally. And they're going to end up committing suicide. On the flip side, I understand that. Not one child should be put through the situation where they are going to be leading towards suicide. But on the flip side, how about the females that are subject to this? Subject to privacy issues, subject to not being able to speak up when they feel uncomfortable, the pressure of having to go along to get along, and knowing that if they do speak up, especially the females, that they're going to be ridiculed, they're not going to be accepted. What about that depression? And I always ask them that. Do we even care about that side of the house when we consider that female suicide rate is hovering about 15% increase since last year? There's got to be something there, and nobody's really looking at that side. So when I look at this, I look at the Glenn Youngkin's policy. It's working. It's making the schools, forcing them to accept the fact that parents are the guardians, the legal guardians of these children, and that the best way to educate and raise children is through the parents.
I mean, a lot of things potentially can cause a adolescent or pre-adolescent to raise questions about their gender. I mean, it could be peer pressure and trying to regularize the notion that maybe you ought to be questioning your gender, or it could be some abusive incident that happened to them. The parents are the people most likely to know what are the underlying causes and how to deal with it. One of the big problems I have with the Fairfax County policy is they assume that parents, as a rule, are going to abuse their children. I mean, there might be one parent out of 100 who will abuse their child, and there are laws and procedures for dealing with truly abusive situations. But if you want to understand what's causing this, and is it one of the rare cases that's real, or is it some mental issue that the child is having that they might overcome over time, the parents are the best likely to know what that is. And the parents also may know the best way to deal with it. What kind of psychologist do we need to get involved? What kind of religious counseling might be appropriate? How do we deal with this in a compassionate way to nurture and support our child? If you say that the child, just on his or her fear, can exclude the parents from these decisions, you're basically establishing a big brother system where the government knows best, and we're going to deal with these situations and exclude the parents. And I think that's a very dangerous path to go down.
It completely is dangerous. And when I talk with a lot of people on the left about this subject, because I talk with everybody, I try to keep my mind open to understanding why. My campaign is about bridging gaps, by including everybody, coming with common sense solutions. And there's got to be common sense solution, and there is, to all these things. But when I talk with them about that, and they always bring up the percentage of parents that don't accept it, and they are against it, and they're gonna not accept the transition, or accept that, or look at it as a mental disease versus something else. And cast out their kids. They always bring up the worst case scenarios. and it puts parents in a bad light. And it's funny because some of these people are parents themselves. And when I look at this policy, I look at it from a different aspect. And I look at, when I talk to people, what if you wanted to transition your child and the schools were blocking you from that? They were holding you back. Maybe, they're not, it's kind of reverse. Maybe the kid comes out and says, I want to be, I'm a boy, I want to be a girl. And they tell them, no, you're a boy, boy, and don't tell your parents. Well, if it was reversed, you got to look at it from two different sides.
Right.
Would it be right? No, it wouldn't be right. We'll have a whole section of people be complaining that that's not right. You need to let the parents know, have them make a decision for their kids. So I look at the flip side. So if it's not right on one end, why is it right on this end? So when I look at that, it's all about parent rights, about supporting whatever decisions the parents want to go through, with this, and how they want their child to be addressed at school. It should be through them, to bring up the 1% that, okay, well, it's going to be child abuse and different things like that. Are we doing steps like this for kids that are sexually abused or that are not trans? Kids that are neglected? No, we're not. I'll tell you the reason I know this. My adopted son, Dominic, at 7 years old with his siblings, was found in a house being heated up by a stove. Father's gone for life for horrendous things against his own children, right? These are things that happen. It happened. Are we doing special consideration for all those kids? Are we, when those kids are found out, we have services that will go in and take care of the abuse, but these are things that has to be, we already have systems in place for this type of abuse.
Right. I mean, that's a large part of my point here is that if a parent is abusive, chances are the school system will know that this is an abusive parent before this kind of issue ever comes up. And we do have social service agencies and ways for dealing with the abusive parent. But to assume that parents are abusive, which is essentially what this does, the Fairfax County policy does, is obviously not true. And 99 out of 100 of the parents, although they may be shocked by the news, they may react negatively. I mean, some of them may, but you have to assume that by and large parents are going to deal appropriately with their kids.
Of course.
I mean, why do you assume that the school system by and large is going to deal appropriately with the kids better than the parents? The school system doesn't know the child the way the parents do. Like I said before, they don't know what all the issues are that are going on with the student. So you mentioned before that one of the big issues in the last governor's campaign 2 or 3 years ago was, is it appropriate for parents to be involved in the education of their kids? And one candidate was saying, no, parents should not be telling schools what their kids should be taught. And I think, that was a turning point in the election, is that the vast majority of the citizens want parents to be involved. And this policy really raises that issue in spades. I mean, it just puts it on the table directly. What do we really care about here, and where are our priorities?
No, exactly. And the priority should be right back to educating our kids, and also working, they have an obligation, the school board and the teachers and the administrators have an obligation to the parents. It's an honor that parents give to the school system to take their kids in, educate them, keeping their kids safe, and also teaching them to make them productive adults, not teach them in the social arena.
Right.
That's where local churches come in effect. That's where family comes in effect and family traditions. When you start looking at this policy, which is, what the left side would like to do is to force pronouns upon. So it goes a little bit further what they want to do. It's not just that little Johnny would like to be called Susie. The school wants to make sure that everybody in the school calls little Johnny Susie now, and to use certain pronouns and allow this, which, with this being a very religious rich community, I mean, we have community members from the Muslim community, Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, everywhere. I go to different rallies and locations. You see them religion from all over. And within those religions, they're taught certain things that may go against. So to have a school forcing this upon their kids really goes and dives into the First Amendment, freedom of religion, because now you're telling that you're forcing them to comply to something that goes against everything their teachings, forcing them to accept something that goes against teaching. Now we build tolerance. Everyone has tolerance for different things that goes on in the world. Religion, my Christian faith tells me to love everybody. But my Christian faith also teaches me a certain aspect of man and woman and God and creator. And that's how God created, says in Genesis, God created man and created woman from that. So it kind of goes against more of a secular worldview on things, and it removes religion and God and faith out of there, puts all that into an individual. And so when I start looking at a biblical worldview of things and a secular worldview, it's having a shift in the public school system into a completely secular worldview, which, if you look in any Bible study, a secular worldview is actually a religious push to think that everyone's individualized, there's no real God. It's actually a pseudo-religious doctrine. So when the schools say that we are not condoning any religion by pushing this forward, in essence you are, because it's called natural secularism. That is exactly what you're pushing upon.
Yeah. Well, I look at this, issue about names and pronouns also from a point of view about the English language.
Mm-hmm.
If Sam wants to be called Sue, I would probably call that person Sue.
Mm-hmm.
But then, then they want to say, well, Sue wants to use, instead of her or she as the pronouns, their, like Sue left their backpack on the desk.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a distortion of the English language. And I object to, a small group of people saying we're going to distort the entire English language, and we're going to impose this distortion on all the students and the faculty under pain of punishment. So if a student says, no, I refuse to say that Sue left their backpack on the desk, that I'm going to be punished for that. And it almost hardly a week goes by without somebody coming up with new pronouns. Instead of he or she, it could be XI, Z, or or Leaf. Sue left Leaf's backpack on the desk. I mean, it gets to the point of being truly ridiculous, I think.
It does.
And again, it goes back to parental rights. The Youngkin policy says that if Sam wants to be called Sue, that's fine if the parents consent.
Yes.
It's also fine if a student is emancipated, like if he or she is over 18 years old and makes these decisions on his or her own. But if a 12-year-old comes in and says, I want to change my name, and I want to do this regardless of what my parents think about it, I object to that. And that's unfortunately what the Fairfax policy provides for.
Well, here's the argument to that. So we start looking at these our kids making these decisions. There's certain reasons why kids can't buy cigarettes until they're 18. Certain reason why kids can't drink alcohol until they're 21. Certain reason why they can't vote till they're 18. Because in society we have created a standard that through science they are in developmental age. They don't understand that they got to get to a certain age to be able to make these adult decisions, right? So when I bring up that argument, first off, I say, parents have the rights, their guardians, and these kids belong to the parents. They're like, well, kids aren't property. You start getting this outlandish thing.
Well, they're not the property of the school system either.
Exactly. But what I also tell them is this: there's certain reasons why there's laws are out there that prohibit kids from doing certain things. Buying alcohol, drinking alcohol. Can't join the military till you're 18. Can't vote till you're 18. So why is that in place? So once you start stripping that portion off and saying, well, they can make these decisions for themselves at, age 8 to 12. And I had a guest over here and they brought up a new word that the 8th grader said he was what was that? Pansexual. I had to actually look it up, and I'm 48. I don't even know what that is. Why would a kid know what pansexual means at 8 years old? When I was 8 years old, I was playing with toys. I wasn't thinking that am I pansexual or not. And so if you start looking at these kids, they absorb a lot. I know when we were kids, you want to be a cowboy, you want to be an astronaut, you want to be these wacky, you want to be a dinosaur. I think Step Brothers made a movie about that where they wanted to be a dinosaur or something like that. But it was part of being a child, growing into yourself, not understanding. There was a day where there was tomboys. Females were tomboys. And at a certain point, they moved out of that section of being tomboy and they grew out of it. When we start doing this to kids and we start pushing that and exposing them with these different genders at such an early age, and then you add in everything in the internet and our kids having access to internet and seeing social media and looking at this as I want to be part of the in crowd because I'm looking at this. So obviously people that are transgenders, nothing new. It's been through society and nothing new. Why all of a sudden now it's increased? Why all of a sudden now little kids are saying that I'm pansexual, I'm this, that, or whatnot? Is it a true something inside them that makes them feel transgender, or is it manufactured through society and through social media? Because what has changed? The only thing is people has not changed.
Right.
Well,
I totally agree with that, Tony. I think that the number of people who are truly transsexual is probably very small, as it always has been. But when you start educating students, or indoctrinating is a better word, from kindergarten on, that well, you think you're a boy, but that was just a gender assigned at birth. And you ought to really think about, whether you're a boy or a girl. Well, you're implanting this idea in people's minds, and basically indoctrinating them to think certain ways. And as a child matures, he or she is going to naturally come to certain conclusions about their sexuality, and the vast majority of them never would question. But when you sort of make this the popular thing of the day and stress this in everything that you're saying to kids from kindergarten on, I mean, you're going to naturally be increasing the incidence of people who are questioning.
Yeah. And when I bring it up to the other side, to the left side, that's really pro on the trans movement. I bring up as my profession, a security-minded person, I look at predators. Sage law was one of that. Sage law was pushed away, defeated by the Democrats a couple months back, and it's Sage Law just is pretty much in line with this, saying the schools are obligated to contact the parents and have them involved in anything like this. And what did they do? They didn't do that. It turned out that this female that the laws made for was sexually assaulted by boys in the bathroom, and then was pushed into sex trafficking down in Baltimore, and then brought back, then pushed in sex trafficking in, and was pushed and found in Texas. Twice it happened. And, it was already shown that she was living with the grandparents. So it already had, issues from not having her biological parents or anything like that. So there was already psychological issues going on that needed therapy and help and everything. And got into a new school, into high school, and just became, I want to be part of the clique, be part of the cool crowd, and drove her to that. And when I talk from a security aspect, and I did talk with people from the trans community, advocates, and I brought up these things. They got very defensive. They said, that's, you're telling me that the 14-year-olds are going to rape, abuse, and so on. I tried steering away from that because we all know what happened in Loudoun County, and we can't deny it, but they still deny that. But I go back to the facts. The facts is, for anyone that's a predator, they're going to look for ways to do things, such as when we females are taught young, they go to college, and they go to bars, don't leave your drink by itself, don't accept a drink that's opened from somebody that you don't know. So through our society, we taught this. Watch out, there's predators out there. But yet, when we look at this, I look at it from a security aspect, and that's one of the biggest things that we bring to the schools is, how can this be exploited through other ways, such as we know, if people don't know out there, the human trafficking is $1 billion industry in the United States, and it's happening all across the world. So you have groups of people that are willing to exploit this because they want to do sex trafficking. They're looking for victims. And so this gives a great avenue for that. And when I talk with them, I said, as pure your heart is to help these kids, are you opening a door for the possibility of a sex trafficker to come in and be able to exploit these kids? I mean, they get up in arms and they get mad, they get upset, and they take it personally. Say, you're saying that, our organizations are, a bunch of sex traffickers. I said, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, come from a security aspect of things. Criminals will exploit things if they get a chance. And are we allowing that to happen? When I say yes. By not involving the parents into this, by excluding the parents and pushing them to schools or organizations, dealing with other strangers that are not in our circle. Have those people been vetted? We have a organization that's a nonprofit. Has every single person there been vetted? No. So now we're putting trust in the people that we probably don't even know anything about. I'd rather have trust into the parents than the complete strangers.
Right. One of the most interesting issues about where we are right now is what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
The Fairfax County School Board has essentially told the State Department of Education and the governor that they're not going to comply with the new policy that has come out at the state level. Well, they are defying the specific provisions of a state law. This model policy was promulgated pursuant to a specific statute that requires the Department of Education to develop model policies. And the same statute says that every local school board around the state will then adopt policies consistent with the model policy.
Yep.
Well, the Fairfax county policy is not consistent at all
No.
with the model policy. And I think that a showdown is coming very soon.
But the problem is, so it's a showdown at taxpayer dollars. I mean,
Well,
you're
well, absolutely right.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
I think that's absolutely right, but I'm not sure that the Fairfax County School Board cares. There are too many on the Fairfax County School Board who are too ideological, and they are going to push their ideology regardless of state law. And I don't think they've got a leg to stand on. I mean, there's nothing in the Youngkin policy that says that there is some civil rights law out there that requires schools to keep secrets from parents.
Yeah.
There's nothing in federal or state law that says that you have to give biological males access to female locker rooms.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in federal or state law that says that if students are going to be in a hotel room overnight,
Mm-hmm.
that you can assign a biological male to share a room with a female. And under the Fairfax policy, that can be done without even giving prior notice to the girl that's going to be sharing that room.
Yeah.
And without giving prior notice to the parents so that they can object. I mean, it's really pretty outrageous. I think it's pretty certain that the Youngkin administration is going to file a lawsuit against Fairfax County and perhaps some of the other jurisdictions like Loudoun County. I saw Governor Youngkin interviewed just a week or so ago when he was asked, what are you going to do? And he carefully avoided saying we're going to sue them.
Yeah.
But he said they will comply with the law.
Yeah.
He said it quite definitively. And then last week, the Virginia Attorney General came out with a 10-page detailed legal opinion, which quite persuasively establishes that the new policy is consistent with the law. And so I think we have a lawsuit that's looming, and perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money is going to be spent by this school board in enforcing, in defying a valid state law and state policy. Now, 8 of the 12 members of the school board aren't running again. Only 4 incumbents are running again in November. The 8 might have just decided, what the heck, we don't have to face the voters anymore. We're going to do what we want to do, come hell or high water. We're leaving as of January of next year anyway. But I think the school board is really pushing the state administration into a position where they have no choice but to file a lawsuit, which will be very expensive.
Well, you said hundreds of thousands. I think it's going to go into millions because they're not going to stop. And these lawyers, the only one who benefits this is really the lawyers, which will drag.
Well, I'm a former lawyer, but they'll definitely benefit.
You know how that works. They don't get paid, peanuts per hour.
Right.
You got a question?
Can I start?
Yeah, please. A little early on that, but why not? Let's do it.
So, can parents file for an injunction and ask FCPS to implement Glenn Youngkin's model policy?
That's a very good question. And it sort of raises the question of what you call legal standing. In the court system, whether it's in federal court or in state court, you have to be personally affected by what's involved. And I think there was a recent case in Maryland where some parents attempted to challenge something similar in Maryland. And the court held that they didn't have standing because, you're not claiming that your child is transgender or whatever. I think there's some some interesting questions. You know, well, suppose that I'm the parent of a girl, and I know that there are some biological males in the school, and I don't want that person to be sharing the space with my daughter against her will. Well, that might give the parents standing to challenge that provision. Or I don't want her to be assigned to a hotel room overnight with a biological male without me knowing about it. So on some issues, there might be standing, but it depends on, you know, specifically how the dispute is framed up. So I can't answer that question definitely yes or definitely no.
You know what, that just triggered my mind with something. You know, when they're talking about the reasons why they're challenging the policy, Glenn Youngkin's policy, was merely because of anti-discrimination laws. And if you start going to anti-discrimination, you go into, you know, discrimination based off sex. But since sex through law right now, unless they change it, biological man, biological female. You know, when has it changed? Now you're having this spectrum that they're calling of sex, where even people that are on the left or are going out there can't even explain, such as the last Supreme Court justice that was interviewed for her position and was asked what is a female, and couldn't give an answer of what a female. So I think, you know, if they want to drag this along, I think it's going to, and they're dealing with anti-discrimination off of gender, I think it's going to go further up into the chain. And that's why I say that it's going to cost millions, because I think this may be something that would land eventually in the Supreme Court to make a ruling on what is a gender.
I think it probably will eventually.
Yeah.
You know, another similar issue is I know personally that at least one of the high schools late last week, all the students were shown a video having to do with the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, and they had questions in there about, or instruction in there about using pronouns and so on. And then the children were quizzed on, you know, did you get the right answer or not? And the right answer, of course, was what the school board wants. Well, I could see a situation where a student says, you know, I don't think that's proper. I think the state law is different. And if they tried to discipline that student for taking a position that complies with the state law but not with the Fairfax policy, that would be another situation where the student and the student's parents would have standing to sue, because in that case, if they're trying to discipline the student, it would be personally and directly affect them.
And if it ties into their religious belief, then you're looking at a violation of First Amendment, which is freedom of religion. And so I think it's going to gear towards something going deeper, which may be what we need in our society, to have all this cleared up and take it to
I totally agree.
the Supreme Court to make a decision.
I mean, the Fairfax County School Board is certainly framing it up so that this will go into the courts.
Yes, it will. And I will tell you this, that the incumbent, Karl Frisk, I don't like giving plugs to somebody that refuses to debate me on issues like this, but I am.
Karl Frisch?
Yeah, Karl Frisk is the number one supporter, advocate of exactly this. And, you know, when I deal with a lot of the people on the left that are in defense of Karl, a lot of them say stuff that I'm transphobic and all this different things. But in reality, what it comes down to is parent rights. The rights of parents should not be infringed upon. Rights of females should not be infringed upon. I think 2 years ago, it was all about the Me Too movement. So whatever happened to the Me Too movement? When it changed out of that, and now it's acceptable to take away privacy rights of females, forcing these things on females as if it's something that they should accept. So I think I think this is all gearing towards a major lawsuit. I think Glenn Youngkin's policy is pushing forward is and defiance of Fairfax County public schools are having, defiance of the opponent I'm running against is having against this, and their dedication to the defiance of that is going to start leading up to court system, of course, and it's going to keep growing. Better yet, what I would love for all the listeners out here is, hey, we start the process now. You want to end this and save a lot of money. You want to save your tax dollars so it doesn't get to that point. Vote him out. I can tell you one thing: vote me into this. That policy is going to go through, and parent rights is going to happen. So that's why I'm starting to tell a lot of parents, like, see what's happening here. You want your tax dollars, or the community, you want your tax dollars being spent on this, countless millions that's going to be dragged through. You know what to do. November 7th, vote them out, vote the rest of them out, have people come in. We'll switch everything around to come more common sense. We'll make accommodations.
This particular issue we're discussing here is just, one manifestation of a bigger problem, and that is that the current school board has spent so much more time dealing with ideological issues than how do we reverse the fact that test scores are going down, and how do we deal with the real issues of education. I mean, you referred earlier to the superintendent sort of rejecting a public survey that said in which 85% of the respondents said, we don't want boys and girls to be in the same sex ed classes. They've traditionally been separate.
Yes.
Well, why is there this push to put them together? It's, again, this transgender issue. Well, in the entire school, there might be one student there who doesn't want to say whether he's a boy or a girl. He didn't want to decide whether to go in the boys' class or the girls' class. So what's the solution? We'll take all the kids and throw them into one class, even though parents don't want it, the students don't want it, but the desire of the small minority prevails. Karl Frisch, I know, when this came up at a work session of the school board, he said, well, I don't like these public surveys because, it might have been people calling in from Colorado or other places that contributed to the 85%. Well, I would say to Mr. Frisch, maybe the 15% were your friends from outside of the jurisdiction, because one way or the other, the vast majority of parents, if they have a say on this, are going to say, there are, squeamish types of issues that you deal with in the boys' class and the girls' class separately. That's the way it always has been, and it's that way for good reasons. Again, although the board has not adopted this yet, I think what they're saying, what they're angling for to come up in a school board session in the very near future is, well, they were pushing to put them all together starting in the 4th grade. We'll back off of that. We'll now put them all together starting in the 6th grade. I mean, it doesn't really change the issue.
It doesn't.
But they're going to try to force this in before they leave office, I can guarantee you.
Oh, I guarantee they are, because it sets precedent. So it's taking inch by inch, changing the structure. And I talked to a lot of people. I said, this whole progressive movement into the schools started about probably 30, 40 years ago, where they started slowly. I went to California school system. This type of thought process, where the school and the government oversees everything and knows best, was pushed to me. That's what I had, that type of thinking coming out of high school and into adulthood, and my thought was always, the government knew best. I should rely on the government. I should just listen to the government. There's this higher class of people that know what's best for everybody. I thought that, wasn't until I started moving to the military, Secret Service, CIA, and then moving into being exposed to a lot of things, I started thinking for myself, wait a minute, and seeing some of these politics, seeing some of these people with higher education, that does not make sense at all. I think we've this started about 40 years ago, and now we're seeing the ill effects of us turning a blind eye to the reality of what's been happening. It's like that slow drip, and all of a sudden that slow drip just boom, boom.
No, you're right. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And people just didn't see it coming. I think COVID, when parents could look over the shoulder of their kids, started increasing public awareness. And also the ideologues out there just keep pushing and pushing, and we've gotten to a breaking point.
Oh yeah, I agree. Other questions, Mary?
Yes. Is Michelle Reed legally liable for these actions?
Not personally. I think that the school board is the one who ultimately makes the decision, but you can't sue them for damages.
Mhm.
What is needed is an injunction in a case brought by the Attorney General of Virginia to compel them to comply with state law.
Not many Hispanic parents are aware of FCPS gender expansive agenda. Why FCPS has not complied with sharing the information to Hispanic parents?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Another part of that is that, so like what you were explaining, Mark, about, if someone's not comfortable, is that being given as like FAQs to parents and students, that they are able to speak up if they're not comfortable in what they should do?
I'm not sure I followed the question. Are they able to speak up and
so
object?
let's say
Yeah, well, parents can also always object, and I think they need to be more vocal. I think more and more people need to be writing to Michelle Reed, need to be writing to and contacting the school board members saying that they totally disagree with this policy. I think more people ought to attend school board meetings and sign up to speak. You obviously have a right to object. The problem is that this school board is very ideological, and they're just going to disregard what parents have to say, what other citizens have to say, until somebody steps forward and compels them to comply with the law, or until voters step forward in November and say, we've had enough of this, and we're going to vote in people who respect parents' rights.
And I think that's the key thing. We can spin our wheels and go into these school board meetings. We already know that they're not going to listen. We already know that they're going to put up roadblocks.
They already prevented from reporting.
Yeah. So, I think the last one I went, they had a series of celebratory congratulations to about 30 people and made this whole thing 5 hours long, which
that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
So I go to a lot of the school board meetings, and they set them up to make them very user unfriendly.
Yeah.
They don't get to the business of the meeting until you've sat there for a couple of hours most of the time.
Yeah.
And if there are decisions to be made, when they voted in their so-called equity policy a few months ago, it was after midnight.
Yeah.
That's after they've given all these virtue signaling speeches, which they usually start their meetings with.
Yeah, and they do it on a weekday when they know parents have and constituents have to go back to work the next day. So it's when you start looking at it, there's a tactical reason why they do that. It's avoidance. It's dragging things out. They're going to drag everything out, this court case, They're going to drag it out. This policy going against, they're going to drag it out until they spend up so much money with lawyer fees until they're finally compelled to do it. Or what do? We do the fast track to that. November 7th, vote them out. If you don't like, I tell a lot of my people that, people I talk with, there's two people running for Providence, myself and Karl, and we are polar opposites. You want parent rights, then you vote for me.
Right.
If you want the schools to have the rights over your kids, you vote for Karl. And it's pretty plain and simple.
One of the things that interests me is how did we get to this point of having this school board that is so ideological? And I think the real answer in my mind is that we vote for the school board once every 4 years, and it's not at the same time that you're going in to vote for president and vice president and senator. And so most people in the past don't really know what the candidates for school board stand for.
Yep.
So if you show up at the polls, and only a minority shows up at the polls in these off-year elections, you will get a flyer of who do the Democrats endorse, who do the Republicans endorse. And let's face it, Fairfax County is majority Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are going in without being educated as to what these people really stand for, chances are they're going to pull the lever for the Democrats.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up with 12 people, all of one party.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think it matters in my mind whether a person is a Democrat or a Republican. I mean, we should all want education for our students, and we should all want the same things. I mean, as a formal matter, you're not running as a Democrat or as a Republican. Yeah. You are being endorsed by the Republican Party, but you are not running as a Republican.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with it being that way. But I think when this board got voted in, it got voted in because people really did not realize, okay, I tend to be Democratic, so I'm going to pull the lever for the Democrat.
Yeah.
If they had known that these people were way over to the ideological left, they weren't moderate Democrats like the majority of the voters are. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have voted these people in the first place. And it's because of a lack of sufficient knowledge by the population of what people really stand for. And I think this election that's coming up, there's a lot more public awareness. And hopefully people will go in with a lot more knowledge of what do the candidates really stand for, so that both Republicans and Democrats will vote in a moderate, middle of the road school board, as opposed to one that always pushes the ideology on one end. I mean, ask yourself, why is Fairfax County public school system in the national news on a regular basis? Yeah, exactly. It's not because they are legislating and governing from the middle. Yeah. You get on the national news because you're way over here on one end of the ideological spectrum, and that's the problem that we have.
You're completely correct. Even when the incumbent, Karl, announced on Twitter that he was running, his reason why he's running is the continuous fight for trans kids. That's his only reason why he's running. I took that same tweet, reposted it. His side of the house got really upset. His Twitter followers got really upset, defending him, calling me transphobic. And I said, these are his words. The reasons why he's running is for this one secular reason. So when people talk and rate what Karl's going to do, I have his tweet. This is what he said. He's running strictly to keep advancing the trans movement in the schools. That's it. And so his singular message is that. My singular message, I'm running for parent rights. For me, if a parent wants to transition their kids, they have that right. They're the parents. I support that. If they don't, they want to opt out of some of these subjects, full rights. Should we have these subjects taught in schools? The gender stuff? No, I don't agree. We should have it. I think it's let kids be kids. I believe, and I talk with a lot of people on both sides. And I want to build bridges here and compromise. Could we have gender studies be part of a high school curriculum where it's elective? Yes. If it's just how when we went to school, there was electives that we could take. You know, we have to take so many electives. Could that be an elective that a child with a parent say, hey, I would like you to take that elective. I want to take that elective. Does it have to be mandatory? No, it shouldn't be mandatory. Such as, certain places they want to give a course on Bible study. It should be elective. It should be mandatory all the way through, because you shouldn't, our society, it's built upon the freedom. And part of that freedom is not being subjected to certain things all the time. Any more questions?
No.
No more questions. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up right here. Any parting words?
Go to the polls and vote in
There
November.
you go. Let me get your card right there. I know we put it up. That's it, right? Agenda. Okay. So for more information, guys, please go to Mark Spooner's site, and it's going to be hard for me to read right here. It's called www.fairfaxschoolsmonitor.com. Mary just put it up on the big board right there. Check it out. Get some more information. He has a wealth of information. Plus, you can reach out to him on there, Mark at fairfaxschoolsmonitor.com. Reach out to him, send him an email, get some more information, get educated. This is an important time. We go through our society right now, we're looking what's happening. You got, kids out there running amok. We got kids causing vandalism, kids loitering around past midnight. We got kids living off of society or social media. It's little things like this where we need to bring family back into the fold. We need to have more mentors. And when we start taking away families from our kids, start separating them, you lose that level of morale, values, and discipline. Something that all kids need. And what this election is not about us. It's about our kids and what's best for them. But when we look at our kids, we look at our kids as a whole. It's best for all of them. Is there ways where we can accommodate trans kids without infringing on the rights of females? Yes, very much so. There's many ways. But until we look at this and say, hey, we want to come out with a common sense approach, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to continue floundering how we are. November 7th, like Mark said, is the most important election that Fairfax County is going to have in probably the past decades. It's our time to make a change. We can either spend our tax dollars with Fairfax County Public School fighting these policies against Governor Youngkin and waste our money, or we walk over to the polls, we do early voting, and we vote them out and vote people that will change this. So join us on making a change. Mark has been doing this on his own. He's a champion of change. He's a champion of standing up. Now we need you. We need you to stand up and make that change. Thank you. Reach out to us if you have any other questions. Reach out to Mark. Reach out to myself. More than happy to have you come on board. Also, if you are a proponent for what Fairfax County Public Schools is currently doing, going against this policy, and you would like to debate this live, I have extra mics right here. You can come on board. We could debate this and have an honest conversation about why this is, in your view, this is a positive thing and not a negative thing. Thank you and good night. And we are